All right. Now, this is interesting. I've known Chris Mannix for a long time covering the NBA. He covers the entire NBA, but he grew up in Boston, and all of us, you grow up with a team. It's your team for years and years before you get into the business. You tend to have a greater understanding of it and appreciation for it. Chris Mannix grew up near Boston, so we know he knows the Celtics in and out. Not that he doesn't know the Lakers, but he's about ready to tell you something, and I can't even believe he's going there. Chris Mannix now, senior writer, Sports Illustrated, at the volume as well, NBA writer on the show. So, I saw your tape, and I was like, anybody can say Lakers are good. But when I saw you say it, I thought, okay, Chris really, really absolutely believes it. This is not some take. Is it an Austin Reaves thing? Because you didn't feel this 3 months ago. I didn't hear this 3 months ago. What has transitioned you into a Lakers win the West guy?
So I've been kind of feeling this for a few weeks now, somewhere between when the Lakers beat the Warriors for the third straight time, they went to New Orleans, beat up on the Pelicans. I was going to write this back then, but then they lose to Houston in kind of a clunker, get beat by the Mavericks at the buzzer a week or so ago. But they beat Oklahoma City. They just win last night against Chicago. And I'm looking at this team, and I'm seeing a complete group. I'm seeing Anthony Davis play like an MVP. I'm seeing LeBron James back in the mix and looking pretty good last night, that's for sure. Austin Reaves has taken off over these last 3 weeks. But most importantly, 3 months ago, they didn't have a functional roster. They had Russell Westbrook on it. They had a bunch of non-shooters. They made the changes they need to make to put the right pieces around LeBron and AD. And I think this team is going to take off. Now, some of it is a combination of the Lakers, I think, are better than people are giving them credit for, and the top of the Western Conference is a lot worse. But I think this Lakers team is going to win the West. I believe it.
Malik Beasley now is in a little bit of a funk. They need him to hit threes. Rui has always been a bit inconsistent. That's why he bounces from one team to the other. The Austin Reaves piece is fascinating. So we were talking about this earlier. He's a winning player. He's very aggressive. He gets to the line. He can score. Terrific vision. Excellent passer. He's a willing defender. Do you think the Lakers are a little shocked at how good, how quickly he's become?
Yes, because if you go back to the middle of last season, I think it was January, when Austin Reaves couldn't make a shot. And I think back then the Lakers were really starting to get down on Austin Reaves, not really believe as much in him. But he put in the work this offseason. He improved his body. He improved his shot. He is now a reliable three-point shooter. And when you see D'Angelo Russell after the game last night, just unprompted say there's almost nothing Austin Reaves can't do offensively. I had to watch that a couple of times to make sure he wasn't being hyperbolic or saying something tongue-in-cheek. But he really believes that Austin Reaves is developing into a complete player. He's averaging 16 per game in the starting lineup. He's averaging 18 per game, since the All-Star break. This is not a small sample size anymore.
We talked when he first came out. I said, "Is it Jeremy Lin? Energy, rested. You get to this point in the season, some guys are worn out, and you just get this energy. Nobody knows his game, and then about 4 weeks later, it shrinks. He feels like there's more depth to it.
I think there's more depth to it, and partly, look, we looked at Jeremy Lin and wondered, was he a star? Like, could Jeremy Lin be a franchise player for the Knicks?
Good point.
No one's believing Austin Reaves is going to be anything more than a third or fourth option. But can he be a reliable third or fourth option? Absolutely. He can defend. He's athletic. He's shooting the ball. Put him in that lineup with LeBron and AD, and he is going to be the perfect complementary player. I'm telling you, you go into the postseason, you say, all right, first-round matchup, Lakers-Nuggets. That's tough. But the Nuggets, since the second half, have the 18th best defense in the NBA. Memphis is a mess right now. We'll see what happens with them. I think that Brandon Clark injury is really going to hurt them. Sacramento is just happy to be there. They just got their win last night. Really, the biggest threat to the Lakers getting out of the West are the teams in the bottom half of the bracket.
Yeah.
Like the Clippers, if they can get it together. The Suns looked pretty good last night, and Durant's only going to get better. I really don't think it's a stretch to say the Lakers can and will win that first-round series against a top-3 team, and from there, anything can happen.
Yeah, I do believe they could beat a Sac or a Denver in a series. My question becomes, okay, now we have to play another 7-game series. That's where Golden State's guard depth or the Clippers' wing depth, I think, becomes a factor.
But you're talking about a Clippers team that we don't know the future of Paul George. It sounds like he's going to at least miss the first round of the playoffs. Nobody has any idea when Andrew Wiggins is going to come back. The Warriors aren't winning anything without Andrew Wiggins. So those teams have some big question marks as well.
So, listen, I made this argument. Don't conflate great scorer with great player. The great players in this game, it could be Havlicek, Russell, Kareem, West. Kobe was a 12-time all-defense. Magic Johnson, point, scoring, leadership. I've also grown up in my life, World B. Free could score. He wasn't a great player. I think Kyrie's become that. So his distribution, he doesn't elevate players. He averages about 5 assists a game. For the ball usage, it's not great. Terrible defender. Not good in the room. I said he's a pickup basketball player. You play with him for an hour, he gets you buckets, you go your separate ways. The longer you're with him, historically, Boston, Brooklyn, Cleveland before LeBron, he wears people out. And I understood and appreciated the big swing by Dallas. Take swings. But I'm going to argue that he's not a great player. He's a phenomenal offensive piece. But I'm looking at stuff now, and I'm thinking he's hard to play with. And I question, Chris, Porzingis, Brunson. Is Luka easy to play with?
No, he's not easy to play with. And if you ask general managers about the perfect piece that it can play opposite Luka Doncic, it's hard to get a clear response because nobody's really sure what that player is. Luka is such a high usage rate player.
Yes.
Really, you need to build a team, frankly, the way the Mavericks built their team around Dirk Nowitzki, where you have some really good complementary players. You've got a whole bunch of shooters that can stand in the corner and get open and make shots when Luka finds them. So Luka is I think he is a challenging player to put the right pieces around. I'm loath to criticize Kyrie for what's happening in Dallas, only because whenever I talk to people down there, I consistently hear he's been a good teammate. He's been a good leader in the locker room. All the things you wanted Kyrie Irving to be, he has been with Dallas. The problem with that team right now is that they are just horribly put together. They have 2 guys who are great offensive players, but brutally bad defensive players. They have no back line of defense. Like there was this big buzz for the last few weeks about Maxi Kleber coming back. Maxi Kleber is going to solve some of those defensive issues. No, Maxi Kleber is a good defensive player. He is not a rim protector. So when you have 2 guys that get blown by every single time when they play defense, and Luka doesn't even try some of those times. When you have guys that play that level of defense and nobody behind them and no Dorian Finney-Smith like wing protector, you are going to give up a boatload of points. And no matter how good Luka and Kyrie are offensively, you're not going to be able to overcome that defensively. This problem in Dallas is entirely about roster construction, about mistakes that team has made over the last couple of years, putting a functional group together.
Well, they brought somebody in from Nike who had a relationship with players but wasn't known as a roster constructor.
Yeah.
And so therefore today we question roster construction.
I don't know why teams try to outsmart themselves. Like, let's bring in the former agent. Let's bring in the guy from Nike. Like, great, it worked with Bob Myers, great executive, was an agent, came to Golden State. But I always wonder, I say this all the time, why doesn't a team with an open front office vacancy go to Sam Presti in Oklahoma City and say, here is a blank check. How much will it take for you to come fix our mess?
Yeah.
Like, why don't they do that? Nobody does that.
Because he's good at that.
He is the best GM, I think, in all of basketball. And everybody just kind of assumes he's going to die in Oklahoma City. Nobody ever goes to him and says, fix my team. They always try to bring in this guy, the relationship guy, the agent, all this stuff. How about you bring in the executive with a track record of success? How about we try things conventionally and do it that way?
Conventional, yes. So I of course, have to ask you about the Celtics. So I have said this all year. I really do believe Chris Middleton's regressed. Drew Holiday, Crowder, Lopez having a good year, Joe Ingles. They've added elements. Middleton's always been to me a very good B+, not an A. Injured this year coming into it, so it gave Boston an opening, and I think they know that, and they've gone out to find pieces. So, but here's there are elements. In the NFL, it's different. In the NFL, if you have a great coach and a great quarterback, you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to have bad linebackers, bad this. In the NBA, there's also elements. You generally have to have 2 elite scorers, rim protection. I want a coach who's been around the block and doesn't get worked. We all like Boston. I watch them in late game situations, and I got to tell you, there's sometimes Jaylen Brown feels like he's the man because he's just more aggressive and assertive than Tatum. I don't like all their substitution patterns. Am I, being a West Coast guy, looking at the Celtics and only seeing flaws? I am worried about them in close games.
I think that's fair. In a way, they've had this kind of Benjamin Button-like experience where last year they started off terrible and then took off in the second half of the season. This year, they started off great and have stumbled in the second half of the season.
Why?
Look, I think they had the benefit of continuity, of chemistry early on. They really just hit the ground running from where they left off in the playoffs last year. They experienced virtually no adversity until we got to the midway point of the season. The concerns about coaching, I think, are legitimate. I think Joe Mazzulla, who I've known for years, is one of the smartest basketball people I have ever met. But until you are in it, you don't know what it feels like.
That's
until
right.
you're in the thick of it.
And you're going up against a Kerr, a Budenholzer who's been around forever.
Budenholzer, Doc Rivers, Eric Spoelstra maybe in the first round. Like, you're facing masterclass basketball coaches. And look, the Celtics last year, they went to back-to-back Game 7s. They didn't breeze through the Eastern Conference last year. They went to Game 7 against Milwaukee, and they went to Game 7 against Miami and almost lost both those series. So you're going to need someone at an elite level. And Joe, to this point, because of those substitution patterns, whatnot, has not proven that. But Rob Williams scares me. His injury history, Colin. This guy needs to play through pain. He did it last year.
I contend, and I said this last year, through 3 games in the finals, I'm like, if Robert plays, they're beating the Warriors. I think because you get no freebies. You take away Looney's offense, you get nothing around the Warriors get nothing around the basket with Williams. And I don't think you can beat Milwaukee without Robert Williams.
They know they can't beat Milwaukee. That's why at the trade deadline, the Celtics were so invested in getting Jakob Poeltl out of San Antonio, even willing to give up a first-round draft pick to do it, because they knew that if Rob Williams goes down, the combination of Al Horford, Mike Muscala, and whoever else is part of that rotation, Luke Cornett, is not going to get it done. So they are just pins and needles hoping that Robert Williams' knee and his overall health holds up. So that's one of the bigger roster personnel problems. The other one is Grant Williams. Grant Williams has regressed this year.
Why?
You talk to different people. Some think maybe it's the contract. He's up. He didn't come to terms on a deal with the Celtics last summer. He was extension.
Got in his head a little bit.
Maybe now it's getting his head a little bit. He was a big time 3-point shooter early on, got hot, but has really regressed. Look at the playoffs last year. The Celtics don't win Game 7 against Milwaukee without Grant Williams. He made 7 threes in that game. Was dynamic, for Boston. Played great defense against Giannis. Played great defense against Bam Adebayo and others in the playoffs. If he is not the Grant Williams of old, this team's in trouble. So the Celtics, I think, as much as any of those top 4 teams, are going into the playoffs with real questions.
Finally, I am a sucker for Kevin Durant. I said before, it bothered me when he left the Warriors for Brooklyn. I said that'd be like Mahomes going, I got a buddy that's going to play with the Jets. I'm going to go play with the Jets. Like, no, do not do that. But in basketball, we tend to understand that we're tougher on our quarterbacks than our NBA stars. Mobility, shoot, market size. We kind of give them a pass. I hated it. So when he went to Phoenix, I'm a sucker. I'm like, I love this because I do believe functional coach. They got the bad owner out. Functional coach, highly competitive, smart guy. Devin Booker, to me, is a really good guy because he's chill, not real needy. You know what I mean? He's not – I think you can work with him. A lot of guys can work with him. So I think Phoenix, I think their bench is fine. I see cynicism in your eyes. I can sense cynicism. J-Mac's cynical on it. What is it that you don't like about Phoenix?
It's not that I don't like what Phoenix has done. It's that it's really hard to develop the chemistry needed to win a championship when you make a deal of that substance in February. Like, I think this team needs a full training camp, one off-season signing in order to get to that level. I'm more concerned than you apparently, about the bench that they have in their rotation.
They got 2 former starters on the bench. They got guys that can get a bucket.
Who are we talking about?
Warren and who's the other guy?
TJ Warren was a starter like 5.5 years ago. Like that, he's been injured for forever, for like the last 3 years.
Kind of started.
Josh Okogie is fine.
He's kind of an interesting piece.
This is like you like the guy that loves the buyout signings and all those guys. Like it's like Terrence Ross is fine. Torrey Craig, starter in Orlando. Like what are we doing? What are we talking about here? It's in the NBA. It's in the NBA. I'm equally concerned though about Chris Paul because
that worries me.
It was a small sample size, right? Only 3 games with Durant before he went out with an injury. But I watched that Dallas game. And the Mavericks, even though they're not a good defensive team, are a really smart defensive team. They got good, smart coaches there in Dallas. And their defensive philosophy was to load up on Devin Booker, load up on Kevin Durant, defend DeAndre Ayton, and just leave Chris Paul with nobody within 20 feet of him. And he wasn't able to make shots in that game, or wasn't able to make shots in those few games, I think, that Durant played in. He's shooting, I think, one of the lowest field goal percentages of his career. It just doesn't look like – it looks like this is the year that he kind of – slipped off that cliff. Hasn't fallen off the cliff, but it's kind of slipped off the cliff. So his ability to make shots, I think, is going to be what you watch for with the Suns.
See, I consider starting for Orlando.
You got to stop. Tory, I'm getting like, you want a Torrey Craig jersey here? Who else they got on that bench? Are you a Jack Landale? You a fan of him?
Listen, I'm just pro player. I'm an optimist. This is optimistic, Uncle Colin.
Somebody said to me about guys that sign via buyout. It's like there's a reason they get bought out. Like there's a reason they're available. Like they're not going to be saviors.
That's fair enough. For the volume, for Sports Illustrated, a lot of information. Pushback as always. Chris Mannix, great seeing you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.